One of the things that's so fun about having fruit trees planted in your yard is being able to have a bunch of variety. And so you might be like my dad, where you've got a bunch of citrus going and an avocado and a plum tree in the back, or you may have a huge pomegranate like he does in the corner, or some apples and cherries around the corner and another pomegranate. He's Persian. But you might also have some variety in how recently you planted those trees. So you might be planting a new tree next to an established tree. They've got some different needs. I'm Cameron, welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through some of the pruning considerations, summer pruning considerations for an established tree like this peach tree versus a relatively newly planted tree like this peach tree over here. They've got different needs. I'm gonna walk you through some of those. Let's get busy. So when you're doing your pruning, you often will hear winter pruning as the time to do it when everything is dormant, but summer pruning is also really important for your trees. A few of those reasons are, when you do summer pruning, you give it an opportunity to put out a new flush of growth, and that often will be your fruiting wood for the next season. So you may end up with more fruit. You also are wanting to maintain the balance of the overall tree, and you can better see what the balance is when it's full of leaves and totally fleshed out. And the third is all of these leaves are creating this energy, and as the tree is going dormant, it's going to store all of this energy down in the root system and down in the trunk. And when it comes out to put a flush next winter, you want it to be balanced with the energy that's in the roots. And if you do this, all of this major pruning in the winter, you can have an imbalance and have a lot of vegetative growth, which is not what you're looking for. You want fruit out of a fruit tree. And so before we go on, if you're not yet subscribed to the Busy Gardener channel, would love for you to do it. If you haven't checked out our memberships, why don't you check them out below? Click join, see if there's an option and perks that work for you. We do video walkthroughs and things like that. And if you stay tuned to the end of this video, I'm gonna show you the difference between fruiting wood and vegetative wood, so you know which kind of wood to leave on your tree if you can help it. All right, let's talk first about this mid-pride peach. This is a fantastic peach, very tasty, sweetens up really well, especially when it's in full sunlight like this is at my dad's place. And this is a young tree, 2, maybe 3 years in the ground. And those first few years are so important for determining the eventual structure of your tree. And for these trees, you want them to be really bushy trees. We don't want them to have long limbs with fruit at the end of it. We're thinking more of like a fruiting shrub, if we can help it. And so that's why we made our initial heading cut about 2 feet high, about knee high, maybe a little less than 2 feet, 18 inches. And that's put out a nice little scaffolding. But I do notice that there's some things that need cleaning up. Summer pruning, we're not thinning out the middle of the tree because we want this canopy to provide shade to the interior of the tree so it doesn't get burned. But we are looking to reduce the overall size of the tree by making these types of cuts, as well as encouraging growth in the direction that we want it to go. And so first I noticed that there are a couple of crossing limbs that are in here. I might handle that when it comes to the winter pruning, again, keeping the inside of this shaded. But I do see that we've got a lot of tipping cuts. When on a younger tree, we really don't want these like super long, wispy branches. Now, this tree doesn't have too many of them because I've done a good job of pruning this with my dad, but you're wanting to reduce the length of those limbs. And so you could do that by these different heading cuts. And so determining where you want the tree to branch off, you look for a bud that is facing out. So if you're looking along the inside of the tree, you'll notice that there are these buds that are going to be the eventual flowers and leaves. And you want to make a cut that's going to encourage it in the direction that you go. So if you make a cut right above one of those buds, it's going to go in the direction and grow branches out in the direction that you have left that bud. So we want it facing out from the middle of the tree, not into it. So this tree, for this young tree, because we've done a good job of keeping it pretty pruned in the past, is just going to require some little tipping cuts. I'm not cutting back 2/3 in this case. This hasn't grown very vigorously. I think this might be a semi-dwarf. I don't remember. But just making some different tipping cuts is going to help encourage some additional growth here. So I'm going to go around the tree and make some of those cuts, bringing in balance. That is the other thing you want to look at, is balance of the tree. You want to make sure that the tree has an overall balance, that there isn't one branch that's way out competing the others. If it is, you want to cut it back because you want the energy of the tree going to all of the branches evenly. And the way you can encourage that is by leaving more foliage on some of the weaker limbs and cutting back some of the foliage on some of the stronger limbs. Doing something like a tipping cut right here, you can encourage, even without taking off too much. Let's say that this is at the desired height. By making that small little cut at the top and just cutting off the tip, I'm gonna encourage this bud right here to now put out new branches. So you don't always have to go halfway down the branch in order to encourage some of that lateral growth. You can make a tipping cut just like I'm doing here. Just above the bud, this is gonna send out new growth in this direction. A lot of times people will be intimidated by pruning. I wanna encourage you, the tree is designed to handle pruning. It's actually a very positive thing. Think about it, when some branch comes from an upper tree up in the canopy of a forest or whatever and falls down and smashes off a branch, these trees have a mechanism in place to grow and encourage new growth. It's not like you or me losing a limb. A tree is designed for this kind of thing. I do notice that I've got some branches that are going straight down, or like this branch over here, further out than I want it to be. And so I want to take out that little branch that's down here, on here, cutting it right near the collar, as well as just shortening it. So we want to encourage bushy growth here, and so I'm going to be making some more severe cuts on this one. And so we're also just looking again for just balance of the overall tree. I notice it's a little higher in this direction. Truthfully, this branch that is coming up here is one that I'm likely going to cut off because once it's dormant, because it's crossing another one. So I'm gonna have to make a decision then, but I'm gonna leave it in place for right now to make sure it's shading the inside of this tree structure. Okay, not a whole lot needing to be done to this tree. Again, we'll have to come back in winter and take care of some of that detail. But now let's move on to this big guy. Okay, something that you'll notice with this Saturn donut peach, which is a fantastic white flesh peach, almost has like an almondish flavor, very sweet, very easy to eat. The skin comes off really easily, very tasty. We like it a lot. It's a pretty early season peach, maybe May, June, I think is when it's usually ready. But something you might notice here looking at the bottom is how the trunk is totally on this side of the tree. It's way out of balance in this direction, and that's going to create, the heavier that this gets, the more developed that this canopy gets, it's going to begin pulling the tree in this direction. So really what we will need to do is to cut back a lot of the vigor in this direction to try to bring back some balance. A more established tree already has a lot more strong branches and scaffolding that have been fruiting for a number of years, and so your approach is going to be a little less delicate and looking into the future as it would be on a young tree like the mid-pride peach. So we want to come through and pretty aggressively prune this, not thinning it, but trying to bring in the vigor. So we're not trying to chop a bunch out of the inside of the canopy, we're just trying to bring the overall canopy back for the summertime. So I don't know if these are going to cut it for some of those. I need to go get my loppers. As you're looking at this tree, you can see that there's almost a whole other tree on the side here that this peach is having to support. It's going to get heavier and heavier. Imagine this with an entire load of fruit and what this would do to this branch. We're going to come back to broken branches, to a broken trunk in some cases, snapped, and so we don't want to do that. So really what we do want to do is to just reduce this straight away. One other thing we're going to be looking for is to check the overall height. That's something that's very true about an established tree, is checking the overall size. In our model and concept, we're doing this backyard orchard culture, and so we want fruit no higher than we can reach. And so when I see this really, really tall stuff, I want to cut it lower so that way it encourages additional growth out to the side. So first, let's start with this crazy cut that I'm going to have to make. My dad's going to come back and wonder what in the world I did to his tree, but it's got to happen. You tell me what you think with that single cut. Was that bringing a whole lot more balance to this tree? You be the judge. This thing, even with no fruit on it, probably weighs a solid 20, 25 pounds. Add on to that 30 or 40 pounds of fruit that's way out here with a ton of leverage, and this would just rip off the entire thing. Probably gonna cut this back even a little bit further just to encourage the growth to happen nearer the tree. This made a huge difference. If I get this out of the way so you can see where the trunk now is and what kind of tree canopy it's supporting, this is a lot healthier situation for the tree and is going to prevent problems that you wouldn't have on a younger tree like that other peach. Now I'm going to make some topping cuts to where I'm checking the height of the tree at no higher than I can reach. This is where these can come in handy. You may want to invest in a nice set of loppers. I'll link to the Corona loppers and the Corona shears in the description if you're looking for a pair for yourself. With this type of pruning, you want to be going for height, and if you can catch an outward growing bud, that's great, but not needed. You can handle that during some of the winter pruning where you're pruning more for detail. Remember, every piece of growth that's coming out of the top of the tree in an undesirable direction is taking energy away from that wood that you do want to grow and that you do want to support. So you're actually removing the ability of this tree to divert its energy into these things you don't even want to keep. This is a good time to just almost go around the side of the tree once you know your eventual size and you want to cut back into that. This is where you do want to be paying attention to those outer growing buds. You can see those a lot more easily than when you're just reaching up into the canopy. Sometimes you'll notice that you can take care of a whole bunch of thinning or topping with just a single cut. Anytime you can economize your pruning, I think that's a win, because that's just that many fewer branches. Instead of 14 cuts here, I just made a single one and took care of a bunch of vigor. You can see how much vigor has been taken out of this tree by the carnage that's on the ground, how much more compact and balanced this established tree is. And this is gonna set this tree up to produce fruit for us in a way that's reachable next year, as opposed to it being way higher and us having to come out and get a ladder. If it's downward facing and it's way high up off the ground, it's not as big a deal as when it's on the ground. So you can leave some of the stuff that might be a little downward facing. Usually downward facing is something you chop off, but we've gotten some fruit off of these, and this one seems to have in some ways a downward habit. So we don't need to sacrifice the fruiting that we would have off of these branches next year. But I am gonna tip them back a little bit. If these trees were a lot closer planted together, I'd have to be a lot more aggressive on my pruning cuts going in. But because this has a lot of room before it hits the tree on either side of it, we can let it grow that much further out. It really depends on your particular scenario. A lot of times you'll hear somebody talking about, or even me talking about, fruiting wood versus vegetative wood. And what I mean by that has to do with these buds that you'll notice that are making their way up the tree and up the branch. When you see a group of 3 like this, this is a fruiting bud here. It's 2 flowers on the side with a leafing node in the middle of it. But if you notice, you make your way up this one, you notice there's only one here. This is a leafing node, leafing node, leafing node, leafing node. And so this is going to be a very vegetative branch versus, let's say, this one, which you'll notice there are those little groups of 3 going all the way up the inside of the branch. So if I had to favor leaving one type of wood over the other, I would leave fruiting wood over vegetative wood. So just paying attention to where you see these little sets of 3. Again, this is true of prunus. Apples are a little different, other types of fruit are different, but on anything that is like a stone fruit, you're going to be looking for these little groups of 3. Okay, to recap, for a young tree, you're looking for scaffolding for future growth and you're wanting to establish that even with your summer pruning. For your established trees, you're looking to bring down all of that vigor and height to no higher than you can reach, and you're looking for balance within the tree. If there's some size that's just overgrown, you want to cut that back and divert the energy to the rest of the tree. I appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Busy Gardener channel. Hopefully this has shed some light on this thing for you, and whether you've got 1 tree to prune in your orchard or 500, till next time, stay busy.